Hi, everybody. I'm with Daniel today, and we are going to have a very interesting conversation about music. I met Daniel through a friend of mine when I was doing a postgrad in entrepreneurship. There's a lady that I went to college with who linked me with Daniel and said, Look, you have an entrepreneurship mindset. Daniel also has some businesses that he's running online. We ended up collaborating in some businesses that we're currently working on. This conversation really is about how do you use the talent that you have to make money. Daniel is a musician, and I used to be a musician myself. And one of the things that we used to speak about in our conversation as we talking about business entrepreneurship is that your voice is not just a gift, or your talent to play an instrument is not just a gift. It can be a business if you strategically position it. And we spoke about music, that most people treat music as a hobby. And one of the things that we spoke about is that stop treating music like a hobby and start building income around that talent that God gave you. Talent gets attention, but your systems create an income for you. So Daniel has done all of that. He has built, I would say, a very successful business in the music industry. And our conversation today is just to those people who are gifted with music, but they don't know what to do. They don't know what to start. Out of this conversation, I hope you will get from it that that voice that you have, that talent that you have, you can for sure monetize it. So, Daniel, how are you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Innocent. Good to talk to you.
Good to see you. Yeah, good to see you virtually.
So, where to start? That was a great intro. Thanks for the introduction.
No worries. So look, this is just, comes from some of the conversations that we've had before, where we talk about business and how do people, the mindset behind business. And you have been successful in the music industry. And I used to be in music and I left music because, it couldn't pay for the bills and I couldn't make money from it. So I decided to go the corporate route. But you kind of like have done something completely different. Maybe do you mind telling us a little bit about your experience?
Sure, sure. I'll, I'll, I'll say when I got into music when I was a teenager, I started playing guitar when I was 12 and got into making electronic music a couple of years later. So, as a teenager, I was really, really into playing and making music all the time, super into
Yeah.
it. And then as I got a bit older, I left school, I studied music full time. And at that point, I never really questioned that I wanted to do music full time. But I wasn't too concerned at that point with how I was going to make money. I always thought back then, oh, in the future, I'll have released so much music, albums, and, I'll be playing gigs and all the different things I'll be doing will be bringing in income. So I'll be fine. So I never thought that, like, in a few decades in the future, the music industry would change so much that it's very hard to make any money from releasing music. It's hard to make money from album sales. It's hard to make money from streaming. It's very common with the musicians that even performing is a very hard way to actually make a good amount of money. So at a point in my journey, which it was around 2013 actually, I I tried many different ways of making money from music, and one of them was teaching music, which privately teaching that the most musicians I knew would do teaching to like kind of pay their rent, but they never saw it as something they wanted to do or their main income. So they would always be like, oh God, I have to teach this so many hours now, and then I'll go out and do my own music and play gigs and do what I want to do. So in 2013, I kind of shifted to now I'm gonna do this seriously. I'm gonna start my own school. I opened my own school in 2014 and I ran it for 10 years in Dublin, Ultimate School of Music. So that really taught me a lot about business and being an entrepreneur and thinking differently about it. So I learned loads doing that. I closed my school in 2014 and moved over to the UK, moved to Bristol, and I've started a new business since then, which is more around teaching electronic music. So yeah, that's kind of my journey from someone who was just only concerned with making music and playing music into someone I think of myself as an entrepreneur as well, though I still think of myself as an artist as well. I still make music, release music, play music, perform. I still do all those things, but I see them as more promotional, or like they help my career in terms of how they position me, and I get like a good amount of you know coverage, and I get exposure. I get all those things from those activities. But my main way of making money will be like to bring people into my community and teach them and mentor them and coach them, and they do my courses, and that's how I earn money.
Okay, that's quite interesting, and most people, especially most musicians, they never think about money as a thing that they might need. I think most of the time they just focused on hitting that note right, perfecting their skill in terms of like singing. And when I was in music, when I did music myself, I can tell you now, the honest truth is part of it was wanting to become a somebody, like because, I thought like, if I can get into music and I can sing very well, everybody's gonna love me and all my problems will just go away. And I find that most people get stuck in that they forget that if you're not intentional about how you're doing your music, it kind of like is going to affect your finances as well because you spend all this time focused on the craft that when it's a little bit late and bills needs to be paid, you realize that you did not learn or you did not understand the business of music. Maybe just to go back a little bit about your background, because I want to touch as well on the area of education and etc. Because all of us, when we grow up, we are told that education is the key to success. I still believe it's one of the keys to success, but I don't think it's the main key. I know you did some studying in music. Do you mind maybe sharing like some of the stuff that you've done and some of the studies that you've done in this field?
Sure. Yeah. Well, when I left school when I was 18, I did a diploma. It was like a London Guildhall School of Music diploma, but it
Mm.
wasn't in London. It was in Dublin. So it was a kind of affiliate school. And it took me 4 years to get that diploma. And I didn't do it for the diploma. It was definitely as much work as a degree, but they just weren't, the school didn't have the cert, they couldn't give a degree. They just hadn't got it yet. So they could only give this diploma. So,
Yeah.
no one that I knew at the time doing it really cared as to whether we were getting a diploma or a degree, or we only did that course to learn to play music, to develop our skills, to get really to become good musicians. And I did learn loads in the 4 years. I went from like kind of being a not even playing gigs and just having a few skills to being a gigging guitar player playing jazz gigs and other kinds of gigs. So yeah, it definitely did a lot for my playing over the 4 years. And I didn't care at the time about the academic qualification, but after that one, I did a master's degree in Trinity College Dublin in music and media technologies, which was a great course as well. It was a course that a lot of electronic music producers in Dublin had gone through. A lot of people I know before and after I did it also went through that course. And that was, that was, I remember my dad, who's an academic, he was like really surprised that I got in because I didn't have a degree. He's like, oh, you
Yeah.
got into a master's and you didn't even have a degree. So they were kind of letting people in based on relevant experience. And I had a lot of experience in music, playing and studying, so they recognized that. So that was pretty cool
Mm.
of them. I was also making electronic music as well, so it's kind of a perfect fit. The masters that I did, again, I learned a lot about music in it. In the 4 years doing the jazz diploma and the 2 years doing the masters, I learned so much about music. And, I learned zero about business, really nothing, nothing
Mm.
about how to make
Mm.
money. So after all that 6 years of study, when I came out of the masters, I was I was still just teaching guitar in schools, few hours here, a few hours there, a few gigs here, a few gigs there. It was really, it wasn't a solid career path that I could see. And I had many different ideas in my mind about how I might earn money in the future. I was like, well, there's only very few academic posts, but I could try and get one of those, teach in university. And then there's like composing music, for TV, film. That would be something I'd be really interested in. Of course, like being an artist, performing, releasing albums, that was something I also really wanted to do and keep doing. So, you can imagine there's just so many things to do and that you could do, and it's hard to get anywhere when you're so spread out with all these different things. And then, yeah, I've since I left school,
You've
I've never
like
had I never had a 9 to 5 job or anything like that. I've always made a living from music one way or another somehow. So
great.
I've done loads of different things, but it was 2014 or it was 2013 when teaching became my full time job. I made my own school, founded a school, and I did that. So that was like a definite shift for me. I played gigs very rarely during those 10 years, and I was like working on my own music a lot less. So I was like focused on something else then, which that kind of reminds me, when you said that how musicians often, they just focus totally on the music, and that's something maybe that you have to go through for a year or a couple of years because it's a
Yeah.
something that's demanding music. It's
Yeah.
like when you really are obsessed with it, you love it. There has to be a time period, maybe for a couple of years, when you don't think about anything else and you
Mm.
develop your skills. You practice a lot, and
Mm.
then once you become really good at it, you become pretty much an expert in it. After that, then that point kicks in where you're like, now how will I monetize these skills? Because in today's world, if you have music skills, it's not that rare to be good at music. There's a lot of people coming out of music schools who are really good at music. So
Mm.
there's too much supply and not enough demand when it comes to like just having
Mm.
great music skills.
Great. That's quite interesting. So I'm thinking about someone who's listening to this now, who says, look, I'm a musician because same as me, I didn't go to school for music. I just like started music singing with my friends. And what it was about really for us, it was just about us coming together and having that sense of brotherhood. And, maybe whilst we're sitting together, started singing. That's how I got into music. The people that taught me music were some of my friends that I've met along the way, who told me, look, if you want to be good at music, just listen to a lot of songs. You'll be good at music. And I found that to be a really good way of looking into things, which ties in maybe into consistency in life. That if you want to be good at business as well, you can't just like look at the business that you're in. You have to kind of like read a lot about lots of businesses and read about lots of case studies of the businesses that have succeeded and those that have failed. But I'm just thinking about someone who's listening right now who's saying you are lucky you've built this business because you went to school for music. And I just want you, because most people get stuck in life because of the fear of being unqualified,
Mm.
because they think I'm not qualified, I don't have the skills, like just like Daniel, and I cannot build a successful business in music just like Daniel. So for that person who's currently listening, who says, do I need a degree? Do I need a postgrad? Do I need to go and do maybe a PhD in music for me to start making money in music? What would you say to that person?
I would say there were so many times when I've had the thought that, when I was running my guitar school, I often thought back and thought I could have started doing this right out of school at 18.
Mm.
And there was, you know, only, except for the, the musical skills which I developed, which I could have just developed, by just going to a good guitar teacher.
Mm.
The same guitar teacher I had before I went into full time jazz diploma. he was one of the best jazz players in Ireland. He could have taught me probably all the musical skills that I learned in college. Oh, so many times I thought about that like if I had have started my business when I was 18 and learning about business, I could have done really well, because over time, if you're very consistent and you keep doing the right things, you'll build, whatever you're working on. So the degree itself was good for my musical skills, but yeah, that and also the masters as well. It didn't really do anything for my entrepreneurial, you know, skills. It didn't teach me how to run a business. And how I did actually learn in 2013, how I learned before I started my school, I just found this guy in Chicago who had a program that was like teaching guitar teachers how to build a school, and I followed that, and it worked. So that was my first, probably, yeah, first like finding some kind of program on the internet that was like, if you want to learn this, then here you go.
Okay.
It's an online business, so that was a good archetype for me to see for for what I'm doing now. Although that
Mm.
that particular one, he was like super paranoid about people
Yeah.
competing with him. So he was like, only the people in my program can only do offline businesses, offline schools. So no one can teach online. You have to like sign
Okay.
NDA and all that.
Yeah,
It's funny.
it's crazy. I think there you just learn about sales and negotiation and maybe a little bit of manipulation, which happens a lot in business as well. If you're really not aware that people might take advantage of you if you just like, I would say, I don't want to use the word naive, but I would say if you just don't know, you tend to believe what people are telling you to believe. And that creates that anxiety and that fear that if someone makes you sign an NDA that says, you're not going to do music online, then that piece of paper kind of like holds you, but it's not a law, it's not anything. It's just someone else who just thought to do that on their own.
Yeah,
I just
that's
want to,
very true. Yeah, that was funny because, yeah,
yeah,
a non-compete was actually, but it was a whole bunch of stuff. But when I left that program in 2019, I
yeah.
actually showed my lawyer at the time. I was like, look, I've agreed to all this not to have an online business for 10 years or something. Then I showed my lawyer at the time this, and he was just laughing. He's just like, someone in America says you can't have an online business like that. There's no way you
You
can.
just there in Europe doing your own thing
It's
and
not like
yeah,
it's just a
yeah.
made up thing.
Yeah, that's quite interesting because an entrepreneur or entrepreneurship mindset really does not have anything to do about intelligence, being persistent, and it has a lot to do about your own grit as a person and your own mindset, which is a really big thing. You've built a business, and business is hard. I've tried a couple of businesses, and I know this, that it's hard. 90% of businesses do not make it to their first year. And I think it's 85% that make it over their first year, they struggle to get to their third year. So I just want to ask you a question about maybe some of the challenges that you faced in your career so far, and were there moments that kind of like made you try to give up, man? I think you reach a certain point in life where you're just like, this is not working, and people at home that told you to go and get that finance job are looking at you playing your guitar, and maybe the money is not coming in, the clients are not there. Have you ever been in that situation where you thought like, you know what, if I can just like maybe give up on this?
Multiple times, yes, multiple times.
Hmm. That's interesting. What's the mindset there? What brought you out of that? What kept you going?
Well, two occasions come to mind. The first one was when I said I was studying jazz for 4 years. At the end of the third year, I had a set of exams, and they were like performance exams. So I had to play like a jazz gig, and the examiners came over from London and examined us. So we were just basically played a gig for these two examiners from London. So it was like pretty nerve-wracking to do that. But I'd been practicing like all year for it. Put my set together. My teacher thought it was great, so I was like pretty confident. But I didn't pass that exam. I had to get a
Mm,
50% mark to pass it, and I got only 47%. And
mm,
I was so, frustrated. And at that point, I was like seriously considering giving it all up. And that time, I was in Galway in the west of Ireland that summer, and I met a guy who was a really interesting guy. He was like a Tai Chi teacher, and he was an African drum teacher as well. He'd been out to Africa, to Ghana, to study African drumming. And I was really into both those things. I was like in his Tai Chi class and in his African drum class. And I was talking to him about the whole thing and saying how I was thinking of like quitting and going and just moving somewhere quiet, remote, and just like meditating all day, something like that.
mm. I think everyone listening to this has had that moment where you just like wish you could go to a place that is far away
Yeah.
where no one knows you. Yeah.
So yeah, he was basically asking me the question like, what do you think is going to be easier? What's your goal in doing that? So I'm like, my
Mm,
goal is to be happy, to I could meditate all day. And then he's like, but why can't you meditate like here and pursue your career and make money? And I'm
yeah.
like, because, and then it just dawned on me that the challenges are not going to go away because you're
Yeah,
in a like quiet, remote place.
for
They
sure.
just come with you. You just bring your problems wherever you go, they're there. So, I just saw myself, you know, thinking I
Yeah.
was great being in a like hut somewhere remote and just being annoyed by mosquitoes and like being like, oh, what am I doing? I can't do this either. So
Yeah.
obviously I realized that that was not the answer. So the answer
That's
is
quite interesting.
meet your challenges head on and keep doing it and keep doing it. And so I went back, did another year in college. Repeated my exams a year later, did really well, got like 74 or something, which is like a really high mark in that exam. And then, I was like, oh wow, by not giving up, it was just like a valley, and I went back up, and it's all peaks and valleys. It's always ups and downs, and you go down, you're in another valley again, and then you can start going back up again, and all through life you have these ups and downs, and you just have to keep going.
Well, that's very interesting that that man told you that because most people think because I've moved countries and I've lived in a lot of different countries and I've moved continents. And if anyone thinks that whatever you think is an issue requires you to go somewhere else to deal with it, it's a very different world out there because you have to kind of like fix things wherever you are. Anyway, going back to entrepreneurship as well, because that's the side that I'm interested in, in that. How is money important for you or for anyone who's an artist? For anyone who says, look, I just care about the craft, the money will come, which is true. You have to have that mindset. But like we said, that you have the talent, but money for you to get paid, there are systems that you might need to have in place. So how is maybe that important for anyone who's in a creative space, do you think?
Well, I think most musicians and creative people that I know are struggling money wise, and ask any of them, would you rather not have to worry about these bills and paying rent? And everyone would rather have more freedom, more, you know, less stress when it comes to money, so that you can actually just say, Monday and Tuesdays I'm just working on my music, working on my art,
Yeah.
to have the time to be able to just live your life and enjoy your life. You need money. Everybody knows this, but the question is how. And if you're an artist, if you're a musician, if you look at your music and say, how is this music that I make going to produce income? And
Mm.
it's it's hard to find ways to do that these days with the music. We're in 2026. There's AI companies making software that can just like spit out hundreds of thousands of songs every day. So, you know, for a lot of musicians looking at this question, it's, they're just racking their brains going, wow, previously there were ways to do it and those ways are shrinking. So now how do we do it? And to me, how you have to do it, or one way that you can do it, is as an entrepreneur, you have to look at it and say, what can I do that is of value to others, that people will pay me money because I'm doing something for them? What is it? I mean, there's like, the one that comes to my mind is to help people themselves who want to learn music, or they want to learn to do something that you can do. They want to be able to make their own tracks or songs or play the instrument, or, there's many people in the world who want to learn how to do that. And they're not going to do it by watching YouTube videos. They're not going to do it by going on some AI site and going, show me how to do this thing. They need a human, they need a teacher who can understand them, who's like empathetic, who can connect with them and guide them, mentor them. So, what can you do that, can be, what can you do to mentor people, to coach people? If you have seriously developed skills in music, then there'll be other people who look up to you for that. And if you see that connection between your skills and your ability to be a coach, to be a teacher, that is something that is monetizable now. It will be monetizable in the future. It's kind of AI proof. It's much more about human connection and providing this value for people, which to me, it's a very satisfying job to do. I love teaching people. I love meeting people, helping people. And, there's a whole set of other skills that you have to learn in order to make that transition happen, all
That's right.
around making a business.
So what you're saying is your mindset is very important, and you have to work on your ego as well. Because if your mindset is, I want to sing music, or I want to do music so that I can be famous and everybody can love me and everybody would want to do business with me and etc. You're saying that shifting from that mindset to a mindset of value creation, where you're like, how can I serve other people? How do I write songs that can heal those that are sad, accompany those that are lonely, and how can I offer myself as someone that is contributing positively to the world through my talent, of which you have managed to help a lot of people with their careers in music, especially people that are producing music and people that maybe have the music, but they don't really believe in, their capabilities, that this could be maybe a good track. Do you mind maybe sharing about some of what you do in that area and how that is very important to have in the world today, like helping people kind of like achieve that.
Sure. I think maybe this is a bit like off tangent, but if you make music, right,
Yeah.
and you want other people to listen to it and to hear it and to become your fan and listen to it over and over again, how do you do that?
Mhm.
Because there's so many people, there's just so many people making music, and every single one of them is like posting, listen to my new track, listen to my new release, listen to me, listen to me. There's way more tracks than there is attention and time to actually listen to them. So, if the supply is so high in the world of music and the demand is much lower, what do you have to do if you make music to get through it, to cut through, to connect with people so they want to listen to your music? And for me, the answer to that is that I built a community where it's like-minded people who make music, similar type of genres of music, and we kind of have this reciprocity in the community where we start to get to know each other. We start to support each other. If someone has a track and they upload it in my Discord server, then people listen to it and then they give feedback. And then when they post a track, then other people will listen to it. So there's this kind of back and forth happening, and that creates these kind of connections where, like, at a point I just made this realization that it doesn't have to be the case that you make music and you send it out there and then 100,000 people start listening to it and whoopee, you've like become semi-famous. I mean, great if you can do that, great, but if you just even have 10 people or 20 people who actively listen to what you're doing and you listen to what they're doing, and that's enough. That's like a little mini scene that you have. That's a little music community that's really fun to be in. And my focus is on that, is on like creating an enjoyable community where people just like making music and sharing it with each other. And that is part of what I do as a teacher.
Mm.
People discover my music through that as well. And yeah, we're all kind of we're all being each other's fans and like supporting each other's music in that way.
So what you're saying is if you want to create meaningful music and to add value, you have to, and stand out from the sea of these other people that are creating music, you have to be very intentional with what you're doing. That's quite interesting. So the other thing could be social media. How important is social media right now and in music creation and entrepreneurship and promoting your music?
Yeah, I mean, it's very important for sure. And I personally, I do post a lot on social media. I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, and I see those platforms as ways for me to promote my business
Mm.
mainly. I also
Yeah.
have connections, make friends, and chat to people and all the rest. But you know, I I get work from it. It's a source of income. I
Yeah.
just today I just was on Instagram. I saw someone that I recently connected with in Bristol, who's a songwriter. She just posted looking for a guitarist for a gig in London in August. I was like straight in. I was like me, and sent her some
Yeah.
videos, and we'd interacted just once or twice before, and she was like, great. So now I got that gig in London. So
Mm.
that was like, oh, cool, a little win. But in terms of promoting music, I mean, that's a quite specialized. I don't even do that. I'll put a post about my music, and I have a label, a record label, and I have a separate account for that. So I'll post about the releases on that one.
Mm.
But for someone who's just developing themselves as an artist, there's a lot of people who talk about this and teach this, and it's not something that I even like. My students who make music, none of them are like really wanting to get on social media and post all day, because it's
Mm.
music is not a business for them. So that's really important for me to kind of differentiate music as a business in terms of just making music and making money out of it. That's not something that I know how to do or teach people how to do. What I'm
Yeah.
saying and what I do is I can make music that sounds like me, and I'm pretty good at releasing it and promoting it as well. So I
Yeah.
can teach people how to do what I know how to do,
Right.
and I'm not like making, you know, very much money at all. That's not like my concern. I'm not concerned about like being commercially viable as a musician in terms of the music that I make. I look at it more as like an art project that I do. But my business is teaching other people how to do that. Make art, make better music and enjoy it and finish tracks and yeah, get it played on the radio, get it played in clubs, that kind of thing. As serious hobbyists want to do that. They want to get better at that. So yeah, hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So So what you're saying is social media, there is a tool that connects people
Yeah,
and and all. That's great. Maybe we can wrap it up now. I'm more interested in learning about what you're currently building right now. Where do you see yourself maybe in the near future in terms of like the projects that you're doing in music? Do you mind like maybe sharing? Maybe you
yeah.
can also share about the type of music that you do, the type of music that you love, and maybe some of the people that you have been following, that have inspired you to be in the genre and in the music space that you're currently in?
Sure. Yeah. Well, music wise, I've since I was a teenager been really into electronic music like techno, electro, IDM, those kind of genres, like Warp Records, who, they just released an album by Boards of Canada, which is like doing really super well, which is really interesting because they don't do any. Boards of Canada themselves, they're very mysterious. It's a duo from Scotland, but no one really knows much about them. They have no social media presence. They don't do interviews. They don't play gigs. They just make music. And it's been 13 years since they released an album, and they just released an album last week, and it's everywhere. It's everywhere on the internet, Reddit, YouTube. Everyone's talking about it. It's amazing to see that happen because I'm talking with all my friends. I'm like, is it even possible these days to get such a big impact without any social media presence? Because Boards of Canada can do it because they've been around since the 90s, so they already built up this big following. But these days, it's like super hard. Maybe it's impossible now
Mm.
because like you need social media, you need to reach people. But what I'm working on myself, my business is like I have a membership that people can join where they get weekly sessions and monthly sessions and like feedback sessions, and they can do my online courses. So I'm developing that. I'm growing that. I run courses, 8-week courses in like finishing tracks or learning how to use apps like Koala Sampler. So I'm putting loads of time into developing that. And I'm playing electronic gigs, working on electronic music, doing releases on my label. And I play jazz gigs, soul gigs as well around Bristol. So as a guitarist. So that's pretty much everything I'm working on. Keeps me very busy. And I've got a few other little projects on the go as well, like what me and you are talking about doing, and maybe doing the wellness industry is really big as well. So it's in the back of my mind that like making music for background for meditations, background for healing things, that would be a really interesting thing to get into in the future as well. So I haven't really started that yet. It's just like ideas cooking.
That's great. Well, thanks very much, Daniel. It's been really interesting to have this chat. I know me and you will speak, so this is just like a conversation and one of the conversations that we usually have. And we decided to record this just in case someone who's in music and they're wondering, how do I really maybe, because as you mentioned, that most people who are artists, they really struggle with paying bills, of which bills are there for everybody, and I hope that any person who's listening to this might find a little bit of value in the conversations that we have. I think we should do this again. What do you think, Daniel?
Yes, we'll do a series and we'll go deeper and deeper into different aspects. So if there's like questions people have, they can leave comments and we'll address them in the future episodes.
Okay, so if you have a comment that is burning right now, type it on the comments. Thanks very much, Daniel, and thanks to anyone who's gotten a chance to listen to this. We'll talk soon.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Innocent. See you. Bye.
Bye.